A tri-county conversation. What are the biggest issues in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties right now? And on which ones can there be collaboration? From transportation to workforce development and health and wellness of residents. We have all three executives in studio this morning to talk about it. It's April 20th, Easter Sunday, and this is Flashpoint. Happy Easter, everybody. I'm Jason Colthorpe, and if you're finishing up your observance of Passover, well, happy Pesach. Before our main discussion this morning, let's get you caught up on the news and notes of the week. Some updates to the upcoming elections in Michigan. As expected, Mike Rogers is giving the U.S. Senate another shot. Last year, he lost to Alyssa Slotkin by fewer than 20,000 votes, or 0.3%. Congressman Bill Huizenga appears poised to join him in the Republican primary. On the Democratic side, well, added another candidate this week in Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. The 40-year-old Democrat is the former director of public health in Detroit and previously ran for governor in 2018. State Senator Mallory McMorrow is the other Democrat in the race right now. Former Michigan AG Mike Cox added his name to the Republican field for governor. He ran in 2012, losing in the primary that year to Rick Snyder, you recall. And we have our first candidate for Attorney General in 2026. Democrat and former U.S. Attorney Mark Totten is in that race. Now, before he had that job, he was chief legal counsel to the person behind these file folders here. Governor Gretchen Whitmer made news last week with her Oval Office meeting with the president, but then the New York Times popped this photo on its front page this week. And boy, that set off a firestorm of comments from both sides of the aisle. Many Democrats were critical of the governor even being there, which produced this photo because, as the governor says, well, she wasn't expecting to be in a press conference, and in that moment simply didn't want her picture taken. Something tells me we haven't seen the last of it. Well, we don't often wrangle the executives of the Tri-Counties into Studio A at the same time, so let's get right to that discussion right now on Flashpoint. And let's begin with the executives here with us this morning, starting in Macomb County, Mark Hackel; from Oakland County, Dave Coulter; and Wayne County, Warren Evans. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I know it's tough to get everybody with schedules here in the same on the same day, but let's start with transportation. Yes, I know we could probably spend a couple days on this, but Warren, you talked in your State of the County recently. You tackled transportation a little bit, talking about taking a historic step toward, your words, regional mobility, which I know we've talked about at length in the past. But you mentioned a countywide transit proposal. Talk about that. What do you envision for that?
Well, once the legislature passed the new law and the governor signed it, that takes away opt-out communities in Wayne County. So now we're going to work with all of the communities to see if we can get a transit plan that will suit everybody's needs. I mean, you got 43 communities. That's going to be a hard thing to do. But what we're really committed to doing is making sure we individually sit down with each community and figure out really what their needs are. Because it's got to be a communal, we all agree, or it's never going to work. And I think, you know, from the advantages to mobility, both getting employees to work and getting people where they need to go, and actually helping some of these old communities survive, because kids are not relocating in them because there is not, you know, clear transit. So we're going to try to come up with something that will work, and it'll help Wayne County as a region. And obviously, these two guys are a little bit ahead of Wayne County in terms of their transit currently. So I think we're on the right path. I just hope that we're able to convince the communities that it's in their best interest.
Yeah, and Dave, you're nodding your head. I would expect you guys would talk about this a lot.
Yeah, and we asked our communities a couple of years ago, because we were in the same situation. These opt-out communities, we had sort of a Swiss cheese approach to this community's in, this community's not in. So we asked the voters a couple of years ago, should we move to an all opt-in community? Because in Oakland County, you could take a bus some places, but you couldn't get to Novi, you couldn't get to Auburn
Right.
Hills, you couldn't get to Rochester Hills. Well, there are employers and schools there that we want people to be able to get to. So we moved it, but Executive Evans is absolutely right. Every community has a unique need. So I heard a lot that the rural communities, the northern communities, they don't want a bus coming up from Woodward. And yeah, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about paratransit. We're talking about picking you up at your door and taking you to your doctor's appointment or to the senior center or whatever the case may be. So each community is different, but we worked really hard with all of them to get them on board. And by the way, the proof is in the pudding because ridership is up 40% on transit in Oakland County, so we're making great strides.
And it would, Mark, for Macomb County too, it would benefit a lot of people work in downtown Detroit. And I guess I should also ask at some point, is the thought of a rail, some sort of mass transit project, is that possible still for the Tri-Counties?
Yeah, I think that's off in the future. Again, the question becomes, are we going to support that through some kind of a millage? In Macomb County, we have supported SMART, and we had no opt-outs since the 1990s. And, there's always been a support for transit in Macomb County. They have the main routes that people can get on where there's the buses. And as David alluded to, Macomb County, the northern portion of it, we have the community credits where it's tailored more to the needs of those communities in the north. So there is more of a direct connect from people's homes to whether it's a doctor's visit or to work. So every community, they kind of tailor the needs to them, and credits of SMART, they're willing to work with us as the provider to make sure that they're trying to make every one of these communities understand that they're there to provide that transportation need and support. But if we're looking at something in the future where you're talking about rail, something that connects, further out to the west, even maybe to Washtenaw County,
it's a tall task.
we got to understand what the plan is, what the cost is, and then obviously that's where you try to get that buy-in. But first off, as Warren is talking about, trying to make sure that Wayne County is part of that, having that baseline where there is no opt-outs is what's going to be most important prior to actually getting to that point of looking at a higher standard of transit.
And really very important that people don't start thinking about heavy rail and all of those costs. I mean, that scares more people away than anything. Let's get some basic transportation connectivity that's positive, and as Mark said, down the line, if there's enough federal money or those things come in the future, we can think about that. But I think thinking about it now, and I think people, when you say transit, have an idea that we're talking about sinking billions of dollars in the ground to do something, and that's just not it.
And what I always remind people is regions that are expanding what you would call mass transit are doing it through bus rapid transit, not light rail, not trains. It's so much more expensive to do trains when it's just as efficient to do these dedicated lanes with the lights that are timed so that there's no interruption. So I think when we get to the point where we're talking about more mass transit, it's going to be more along the lines of bus rapid transit. So I like people to get their minds around that because it's really efficient, it's really fast, and it's a lot cheaper.
It also factors into workforce retention, which is, when we talk about Michigan's problem with that, it's really the Tri-Counties that we're talking about. And what are you doing, Mark, I'll start with you. What are you doing to both train and retain workers to keep them in Michigan?
And that's the number one question or concern we're finding from, obviously, employers is the workforce. Where we're going to get this talent. Where you've got the baby boomers that are going to be retiring out. You've got a concern with that. Right now, we've got 450,000 people in our workforce, and that number is going to start to diminish. Just 44,000 jobs available in every industry sector right now in Macomb County, and that becomes the challenge. So we're working with all of our community partners, working with all of those that are within the industry, but more importantly, we're working with our educational system. So you got the CTE programs being embedded back into our high schools, working along with our ISD and even Macomb Community College, trying to figure out how do you retrain a workforce or getting people that maybe are retiring out of one job or one career and seeing if there's another pathway for them. We've got a lot of partners that are coming to the table to try to figure out how do we solve this, employment opportunity gap and getting people to realize there are jobs out there, but how do we get them trained for those jobs? And again, that workforce development work that we're doing with our planning department and everyone within Macomb County, that effort is there. So there are jobs available. We just got to figure out how do we attract the talent. And the biggest part of that is bringing people to Michigan, trying to get people to want to locate to Southeast Michigan. Michigan. And that's the job we all have to come together on, along with the state, to get people to realize this is a place that you want to make home. This is where you want
and
to
of course,
live.
a lot of things factor in that beyond transit. We're talking education and a lot of things. But what's happening in Oakland County on that front, Dave?
I agree with Mark when he said the jobs are available. So one of the things I've looked at is we need people with the right skills for those jobs, because the jobs of yesterday, where you could make a decent middle-class life by going to the plant or being in manufacturing, is gone. You have to have more than a high school education. And so in Oakland County, we created an initiative called Oakland 80, and that is, I'm trying to get, it's an ambitious goal, but I'm trying to get 80% of our adult residents with some kind of a post-high school, post-secondary degree.
Which doesn't necessarily mean college.
Doesn't have to be college. It can be college, but it can be an apprenticeship. It can be, an IT, a certification will work. The skilled trades, we need plumbers and electricians. We need all those things. But you need more than a high school diploma to have a good, solid middle-class life and raise a family and all of that stuff. So our goal is to get more of our adults the training that they need. And I would also say this, to look for folks in the county that maybe we've overlooked before. We have a program now for people that have been in justice involved. They've been in the criminal justice system, but they're out there now and they need training, but then they also need an employer who's willing to take a chance on them. So we're looking under every stone to try to find the employees and train them up, because the jobs are there.
It's got to be a big concern to keep the workers in Wayne County as well, Warren.
It is, and it's amen and amen. With respect to their comments, it's important, and it's important to say that, in the last year in Wayne County, we've actually had a population growth.
Yeah.
And this
10,000.
time, right, and this time it is not Detroit going down and the county going up. So overall, we're doing that. And you couple that with the fact that jobs are available. The county's put about $20 million in an organization called Wayne Link, which is a job training program. And the important thing I think Mark has mentioned too is that when you're working with your colleges, there is usually a big gap between what colleges are teaching and what is needed, what the needs are out there. And so the more there's connectivity there so that the training in the colleges is relevant to the job training and opportunities are available, the better off we'll all be.
More with our executives right after this. Stay with us on Flashpoint. Back here on Flashpoint with our three county executives, and I want to dive into what Public Works Commissioner Candace Miller said recently. She's calling on Eagle to stop sewer discharges from Oakland County. She, of course, is with Macomb County, and that's into the Red Run drain. Warren, you can sit this one out for a moment. But Mark, let me just ask you, where do we stand on that? And can you guys work this out on the executive level?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Dave and I have talked about this as well at our level, and let's face it. I mean, you got advocates on both sides that are very much interested in trying to figure out how do we clean our waterways and do the better job that they can of making sure discharges don't end up in our waterways. And so, with that being said, we have come a long way. I mean, if you think about where we are at today, as opposed to where we were at 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it is a lot cleaner, the system. There has been more opportunities to capture a lot of that discharge and send it off into the appropriate areas to make sure that it's treated. But the reality is the law still allows for this discharge to take place when we have significant events, meaning a rain event. And so when it does happen, people get anxiety and there's a challenge with it. So I think the bigger issue is there something that Eagle and or legislatures can do to change the legislation to require the discharges to be different? In other words, lessen the impact it's going to have. But if they do, there's a tremendous cost associated with that. And that's what we all need to come together and understand. So again, there's going to be the tension.
It's not so much county versus county as it is.
It isn't. It really isn't. And again, you're going to have that advocacy on behalf of Candace Miller, and obviously the same thing happening in Oakland County. But the reality is we need to come together to figure out how do we work with the legislature. But as we're doing that, if there's going to be requirements set, understand that that is going to cost money for all of us. And where do we come up with that money to change the system?
You do understand where Candace Miller's coming from on this, Dave?
Oh, I understand where she's coming from. My drain commissioner challenges her assertions. I'll just be frank about that, and says that the water that's being discharged meets all the current requirements. So to Mark's point, which is absolutely true, if they want to increase the stringency of the requirements, then the legislature and Eagle could do that. But it's a huge expense. So it's not something that Oakland County is financially prepared to take on without some sort of state mandate and hopefully state support. Because again, my friend Mark is right. We all want clean water. Right. I grew up in St. Clair Shores on Lake St. Clair. We all know the value of our rivers and streams, and the Clinton River, which is a remarkable example of what you can do when you care about the environment and water. So we all care about that. But we're going to need Eagle and maybe even the legislature to help us
Nash
figure it
and
out.
Brewer are both on the same page on this issue. I think they all realize, there needs to be some changes. But let's face it, the cost is going to come where there's going to be money kind of bestowed upon us from the federal government or the state. Coming from the locals, it's going to be a challenge. But drain districts are different, where if they do decide to make a fix on a drain, or they're going to be doing something different to expand capacity at these facilities, they could pass along that cost, obviously, in your water rates. Right. They can do that. Unlike roads, I can't just fix a road and pass along a cost to your tax bill. But they can do that, but nobody likes seeing their costs go up with their water rates. Yeah. That's exactly what's going to happen if there's legislation change. Money's going to come from some federal pot of money, or it's going to go to our water rates. So that's where we're at with this.
Let me get to a couple topics before we run out of time here. Federal funding cuts, or as the White House would call it, cleaning up waste or eliminating unnecessary funding, is going to put nonprofits in the crosshairs. I want to ask each of you, Warren, I'll start with you. If nonprofits start to get eliminated here, or the need becomes greater, what is your county doing now, or what can you do in the future to meet the growing need that's going to be there for people?
Well, what we're doing now is just trying to assess what might happen. And I think we're all in that quandary. Nobody knows really what's happening. Right. We expect the bottom to fall out somewhere, but we don't know where right now as it relates to nonprofits. I mean, they do a tremendous job to assist government getting things done. And if their funding is cut, then we're really going to have to scramble around once we find out what it is and figure out what core services do we need to provide.
Is it important to kind of anticipate that, though, a little?
You've absolutely got to. And the reality is, when the bottom falls out of those nonprofits, what's really going to happen is you're going to start having increased crime. You're going to start having a bunch of other things occur that is not something any of us is working toward. We're trying to work the opposite.
Right.
So, but also, counties can't do but so much. I'm just glad that in the last 10 years, we put ourselves in a position to at least have some reserves and be able to deal with emergencies that come up. Hopefully, they won't be that much, but we'd have been in bad shape otherwise.
Yeah, Dave, how do you foresee that happening, and what are you doing? Part
of the problem is, you said, can you anticipate it? I'm going to give you an example. Just last week, we were notified on Monday night that starting immediately, $3.5 million that we were using for nurses in nursing homes and long care facilities that help keep the spread of infectious diseases going has been eliminated. 6 people immediately, no notice, don't come to work tomorrow, 6 nurses that are working in our nursing homes. So it is the unpredictability of it. It's the fact that when we get a notice like that, there's no one to call to say, are you sure this is what you meant? Right. We'll work with you. Everybody, I think all 3 of us have done a damn good job about trying to make more efficient government, making sure we're right-sized in terms of the staff and there's no waste. But man, it would be nice to be able to talk to somebody at DOJ or in the administration to say, are you sure that is what you meant? Because we could perhaps manage this if you want to cut your costs. Yeah. But work with us, work with us.
I have less than a minute, Mark.
Yeah, it's about taking a measured approach. Whatever's happening in D.C., I don't get overreacting to, and we try to make sure all of our staff understands it as well. We're fortunate to have organizations like Advancing Macomb that are looking at the philanthropic opportunities out there to backfill some of the challenges we may have, with some of these nonprofit organizations or support people need. So we got the support on hand. We're working closely with those organizations as well as trying to understand what's happening in D.C. with our counterparts. But we're all in that same issue along with everyone else in the country. What really are we talking about, and what really is going to be the fallout from some of these decisions?
One quick answer from everybody. Mark, I'll start with you. What's one big project happening in Macomb County you're excited about that'll happen before the end of the year? Mental health, substance use issues with our jail project that we're working on, helping address that, along with obviously a capacity for the jail itself. Dave?
I talked about my Oakland 80 initiative. We were at 60%. My goal is to get to 80%. By the end of this year, we will hit 70% of Oakland County residents with a degree.
Warren?
I think our healthcare programs and our medical debt programs, I'd really like to get those in gear more. I mean, they're doing a great job right now, but knowing what the economy is going to be like, knowing what's going on now, we got to stabilize some folks and get ourselves in a position to move forward.
Gentlemen, thanks so much. Thank you. Appreciate the conversation. We'll hit the mailbag right after this on Flashpoint.
Thank you.
Let's dive into the mailbag this morning. Got plenty of response to our discussion on the mayor's State of the City address. James Aldridge writes in and wants to know more about why the mayor didn't talk more about schools. With all the money being spent in Detroit, why isn't more being spent on Detroit public schools? I believe the children of Detroit are our best asset resource. Why isn't there a requirement for the big money guys, including Gilbert, Ross, Illich, GM, and Ford, getting involved with making Detroit public schools the best district in the country? Steve asked this: does anyone fact check Mayor Duggan's slides? And he included a screenshot of the slide he's talking about. I worked at this facility for over 16 years and it closed in June 2009. That is clearly not 30 years ago. He also loves to bash AMC, but this was a Chrysler facility from 87 until 2009. It seems like there is absolutely no integrity left in our Detroit news media when it comes to the mayor and whatever he presents. I did do a little fact checking on that and called the mayor's office. Steve's numbers all check out. This email on our interview with State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who's running for U.S. Senate. My hope is that she will be invited to be a guest on Flashpoint again and be asked directly, not just what her position is, but what her plan is for accomplishing these changes. I would like to see Jason ask more demanding questions of candidates for political office rather than somewhat ambiguous questions. Most political candidates express idealistic positions, but are often vague in their plans of how to make those positions become reality. And that's what really matters to me. That's from Jackie Stockton. And Jackie, you're right on that last part, and duly noted on my interviews. On roads, the problem is how the funds are allocated, this viewer writes. Public Act 51 needs to be repealed. It prevents spending the money where it's needed most. Instead, it evenly spreads money to every county. Southeast Michigan has the greatest need because of the volume of traffic and its freezing and thawing cycles. That's from Matt Marco. We've talked a lot about tariffs. This stone cold email says, I am an importer of various goods from China. The goods I import are items that cannot be produced in the U.S. due to the high labor costs and the EPA regulations. The new tariffs will cost my company over $4 million. This will probably result in layoffs, possible closure of the business. Although some of these tariffs can be passed on to retailers, it will raise prices by almost 50% as retailers mark up my products by 60% when the tariffs pass through. It equates to prices going up 50%. That's from Steve Austin. Finally, we know how much Hank the Haberdasher is concerned with my outfits. He's written about that a few times. Here was his latest. Very good interview with DTE CEO Jerry Norcia. Mayoral discussion and sports, and you look good doing them. Hank, what can I tell you? I am trying. Hopefully you approve of the Pistons theme I've got going this week. You can join the discussion every week with an email to flashpoint@clickondetroit.com or drop us a comment on social media or even the old-fashioned mail or a phone call. We'll take those too. Have a great Easter Sunday, everybody. I'm Jason Colthorpe. We'll see you later.